Everybody. Today is November 10th, and we are Dr. Amanda Sterk and
Dr. Jessica Ruzicka, and we are excited to hear all about your journey to Boston last week on your college visits. I am so excited to hear all about your adventure.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, and it's, one of my best friends, she's in Iowa, just called, and her daughter's getting recruited for softball. And we were just having this conversation about college tours, how different they are, and just how grateful she was saying how grateful she was that they're doing different types of tours. Because last time we talked about, there's sort of the formal tour where you sign up, you go through the little tour, and then there's the other tours where you just sort of walk around campus. And we did both. And so we got into Brown. And what I think was sort of interesting for us and for me to see was how different every school approached the tour and what that looked like.
Exactly. Like there's, I'm sure, different emphasis placed on different things at each individual campus.
100, yeah, like what was highlighted, or even just the process of like
Uh-huh.
checking in. Like we went to Boston University, which is obviously a pretty large university, and they had like a full auditorium of people with 5 or 6 tour guides all at once. And so we all came in and we had a whole PowerPoint presentation where everybody else, you just kind of met your tour guide and you walked around. One of the things I was surprised is how limited of going into the student buildings. Like, before COVID, you got to see a dorm room, you got to walk around, you got to really see the science lab. Pretty much, we only saw the student unions. We never saw a dorm room.
Wow.
And we ended up at like 5 or 6. We went to like 5 different tours, like formal tours, and we did not see a single dorm room.
Interesting. Now, did
I
they
thought
show
that
you
was interesting.
pictures?
What?
Did they show you pictures of what they look like at least? Not so much.
Nothing. Yeah. So that was sort of interesting to me that I wasn't sort of expecting. I did personally, I liked the presentation because they went through a application. I know I was texting you like, oh, look at this great representation. But they actually went through like kind of an artificial student and how they actually make the admissions decision. And, we talked so much about that. And it was just great, I thought, to see, they're talking about like if freshman year wasn't that great, but you moved and you went to a different school, like they can understand versus having senior grades that are low. So they went through that whole process. And I thought it was really informative for parents.
For sure. And I love that they're so transparent with it because I think that that is really helpful too for students and parents to understand what that really looks like. It's like an inside peek as to how they actually make their decisions. So that's really
One of their graphs was talking about the different decisions and how many students actually get in on the different sort of application deadlines. So again, was Boston. 57% of their students got in through early decision.
Wow.
Yeah, and they only had about 7,000 applicants, with like 1,000 were accepted. So the acceptance rate was much higher. And I think regular decision was, again, only like 43% of their class made up regular decision. But yet they had almost 80,000 applications for those same spots.
Right.
So I just thought that, again, as a college admissions person, those are things that we're always paying attention to. So I thought that was really informative. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, quite a few students talked about appealing your financial aid and the importance of your financial aid package and how you can go about that. And I thought, again, that was a great piece of information. I know we talk a lot about, and I had never heard really a student or school kind of be that explicit to say.
Exactly. Right. That's great. Yeah, that's really
no, I was like, that's great. They're having this conversation.
exactly. It's not like a secret there. Yeah.
And I think, I've always been under the analytical mind, right? Because I'm not going to these schools. I'm checking them out, and for students and finding that right. So seeing my daughter go through that process was really interesting, like who she sort of emotionally connected with, because she connected with some of the other kids on the tour, We had this sweet girl at it was at Smith College that she wasn't even on the tour, showed us around campus just
Oh,
because she heard us in the bathroom and like walked us around. But how meaningful those interactions were to my daughter.
seriously, right. And that's why we are such big advocates of telling our families to go visit the campuses, because you're going to learn so much about the culture, about the vibe, about the personality of every single campus when you're walking around, right? Like, are the students friendly? Clearly, they are there. So, are there people outside? I had one student, she wanted to go to a college here in the Carolinas, went to visit and was like, there was no one out. It was so quiet. Like, it's not for me. But you wouldn't necessarily know that until you actually go step foot on the campus. So it is a vital part, I think, if you can get on as many college campuses as you can.
And even the reverse, like I loved obviously Boston, it's a big city, even Providence, it's a big city. Sort of interesting where students could create spaces, right? So like I know, like again, knowing my own daughter and knowing your student, maybe a big bustling campus isn't what they look. They want to go under a tree and read a book and have those sort of quiet moments. And there were other campuses that sort of had that feel of just that quaint and quietness, and where others were super robust. We ended up at Harvard. We just walked through. We did an informal tour of both MIT and Harvard because I'm like, I want to get on. I want to see the buildings. And Harvard, there were just people everywhere. Like it was a Saturday night or Friday night, and everybody was out, and it was just bustling. And it felt very different. And everybody was in the Cambridge having dinner, and all the restaurants were packed. And it's just that, what's that culture feel like? That
Mm-hmm.
vibe, the city around
Mm-hmm.
it was all so
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah, and exactly. So, and that's why we like matching students with that campus where they're going to be most successful, because
Yeah.
you're right. Some students aren't into the hustle and the bustle, and that might make them very nervous and a lot of anxiety, right? And so, trying to find that best fit is really, it's fun. It's fun. It's a fun part of the process, isn't it? And you get to
It is. And I
talk.
think really using your time wisely, because it seems like a lot of families came in with very like admission based questions.
Mhm.
And some of the students said, I'm not going to answer like what my scores were or where I was at. And some
Mhm.
kids and families ask that, like, what was your ACT, SAT score? And they're like, well, we don't really, share that. And, so I think a lot of people came in with questions about academic match. And
Mhm.
the questions ended up being more about personal match. What's the culture? What are the programs?
Mhm.
Kind of what's the competitive nature of the
Mhm.
school? Like, is it
Sure.
collaborative or is it really like sort of intense and competitive? So that's where I think people started moving. And then also a lot was said on the student support systems,
Mhm.
talking about mental health on campus, talking about clubs and activities and how to dial in, and then
Right.
also the curriculum. So I thought that was great. I was glad they talked more about that than
Mhm.
stuff you can find on the internet for sure.
Exactly. Right, right, right. Yeah, that is so great. And meeting the ambassadors, I'm sure was a highlight for your daughter too, just to kind of have a peek into their world, what it is like to be a student on this campus.
So, good questions are to ask that I like my daughter asking was sort of like, why did you end up choosing this
Mhm.
college? Like, what sort of led you to be here? And there was a lot of different answers and some that you might not sort of expect. And I felt like everybody, they did have like a script, but yet they were very authentic. And if asked, I think they really did give their opinion, and that was nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's your favorite part about this campus? What's your hardest class? And what is the rigor like? How much time do you spend studying? And what do you do on the weekends? And all of these different types of questions just to get that inside information that you're right, you can't find that necessarily on the website. So,
Yeah.
and then back to the decisions where the most of the students are applying. That is amazing that most are doing early decision up there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was well, not even just early decision, but knowing that they were taking most of their students
Yes,
through
that
early
way.
decision.
Mhm.
And I have quite a few students where it's why both of us really push for November 1st. Are you doing early decision or early action? And what really is our game plan to maximize that sort of token,
Right,
we got
the
one token to
opportunity.
play.
Exactly, right. And I know that we just both wrapped up, I don't know how many students, a lot of applications on November 1st. And now is the exciting part, is that we should start hearing next month, really, where they're getting accepted to. And it's just such I think it's just a relief for the students to know earlier where they're headed or what their options are earlier than having to make those really quick decisions if you do regular decision.
Absolutely. And so, I don't think it's a one and done, who knows where we're at in the process, just thinking of my own family, right.
Mhm.
And going through it. And so, it might come down to at the end, we go visit again. And now that we know if we got admitted, this is just kind of seeing what our feel is and, what's kind of works. Like I said, for example, my daughter brought up, all girls school. So we visited Wellesley and we also visited Smith, and being from the Midwest, it's just not something that, I didn't know a lot of people that had gone to those. And so, and what they think right now as a junior might not be where they're going to be at in a year from now. But I'm glad we had the opportunity to explore, to ask those questions and see if that's something that we want to continue with for sure.
Sure. Fun fact, I went to an all-women's college, Chatham
You did?
University, in
Wow.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Now it's co-ed, but back when I graduated a long time ago, yeah, and I had a great experience. So
Yeah.
it is, again, a different feel, but really, it was a great experience. So
Yeah. Well, I'll just give a little anecdote. So we were at Wellesley, it was interesting. All the girls grouped together because usually in everybody else, it was like the parents kind of stayed with the kid, right? And we all kind of walked along. And in some of the colleges, like there was families that couldn't keep up and they're like, well, we're going to keep on going. And, but all the girls grouped together, they were talking. And by the end, they were actually exchanging phone numbers and information because they connected. And it was just very authentic and it was neat to see. But you're right, it's a different culture, right?
it is very supportive, very encouraging, very uplifting. So anyways, refreshing. But
No, and special mission schools I think are really, and they're there for a reason, whether it's a historically Black college and university and HBCU, there's tribal colleges, there's, obviously gender-based. So there's lots of opportunities out there, maybe colleges that change lives. There's a lot of different where they have kind of a unique thing about them. And it draws you in for,
Yeah. Really
That's
cool.
awesome. So we had a great time, learned a lot. I tried to be mom and not college admissions counselor.
Okay.
Tried to sort of poke and prod and, but I think one of the things that I would suggest to all parents is after each stop, we stopped and we talked about it and we wrote notes because we saw, like 7 colleges. We went boom, boom, boom. Not all were formal, some were informal, but we wrote stuff down. And we decompressed and we did that. And I think that's really important as a family to do that.
Exactly. Because after a while, you hit 7 colleges in what, 3 days?
3 days. Yeah, we were.
You start to
You get a little
all
loopy.
jumble together. Yeah, so definitely taking notes helps when you get back home and you're rethinking about where was that? Yeah, okay, where were
Who
we?
said that? And and you know what? And I think as we got through our questions got better, right? So even for my own daughter, like once you heard it once, now you knew kind of what you wanted to find out the next time. So don't be afraid that this is a growth, right? This is learning what you like, what you don't like, and that's okay. And that's why, again, you might have to go back and do a second tour because now once you do that exploration, you know a lot more and what's sort of important to you, your values and everything else.
Absolutely. And in our newsletter that's coming out next week, we talk about all the different types of admissions applications and all of the options. So if you are starting to think about senior year and applying to schools, that is a really good just information just to kind of get you acclimated and introduced to all of the different terminology that you can use when you are visiting campuses to ask. Not all have early decision, not all have early action. So understanding your options, especially as junior families start to make these college tours.
Right. No, I think that'll be such a game changer, right? It's just knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it. I think is fantastic. And if you're not part of our newsletter, definitely let us know. But you can go on our Method website and get attached to that. Same with the blogs as well, webinars. We have so much free resources
Mm-hmm.
available all the
Yeah,
time, 24/7. So awesome.
absolutely.
Well, it is Friday, shall we?
Shall we? All right. Well, you guys have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.